Good evening, Professor Lawrence and fellow classmates. My name is Armando Ojeda, and today I'll be giving you an informative speech on post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, before we begin, I would like to introduce my audience member, Michaela Marco. She will be here throughout the duration of my speech. So, as previously mentioned, I'll be giving a speech on post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD for short. Now, this topic touches close to home because I have firsthand knowledge of what PTSD is and how it can affect a person and the person's surroundings, really. I am a combat veteran. That is how I have my firsthand knowledge, but I've also attended support groups, focus groups, seminars, and I've participated in a couple of research projects for school, especially in my psychology class, which I just took previously. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, really has become very relevant within the past 5 or 6 years. Now, it's not a new psychiatric condition. Matter of fact, it's been around since the Shakespearean era. King Henry V, in William Shakespeare's writing, he had PTSD. World War I veterans, it wasn't labeled as PTSD, but they had the same symptoms and the same onsets that are PTSD, essentially PTSD. But back then, we called it shell shock. It wasn't until, I would say, about the 1980s when post-traumatic stress disorder got its name. And, it is one of those psychiatric conditions where it's usually associated with veterans, but really it can happen to anyone. And PTSD, by definition, is a psychiatric condition where a person experiences or witnesses a traumatic event. Now, the two key words there are experienced or witnessed. Now, it's two different things. You could witness a tragedy, and it could develop into PTSD, or you could experience it and it could develop into PTSD. Now, traumatic events could be anything. They could be sexual assault. They could be a combat veteran seeing combat. It can be as tragic as a natural disaster or something as the death of a loved one. So it really just depends on the person and how they handle the trauma. So we discussed what it is and what causes PTSD. So let's discuss some of the symptoms associated with PTSD. Now, some of the most notorious symptoms are nightmares, a person waking up with cold sweats, reliving the moment in their dreams, and it just keeps replaying over and over, and this takes a toll on the mind, makes people afraid of not sleeping. And then there's the flashbacks. Now, flashbacks, they happen because of certain triggers. Now, for instance, on the 4th of July, we just celebrated 4th of July not too long ago. On the 4th of July, fireworks could be a trigger for combat veterans. It could remind them of some of the tragedies that they experienced during, their tours overseas. So it's really, symptoms can happen, symptoms are pretty much there. It's pretty much, how do I explain it? It's pretty much very loosely. They have a lot of symptoms that could be considered having post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's important that you team up with a psychiatric group and get the diagnosis from them. Usually PTSD comes about 3 to 6 months after the traumatic event, and it doesn't always have to last a lifetime. With help with groups, and sometimes medication can help as well. Now, PTSD, we discussed what PTSD is, what causes it, and some of the symptoms that are very prominent. Now, here's some information that not that many people know of. PTSD can lead to a lot of dangerous things that affect the mind and the body. For instance, most people that experience a traumatic event and have PTSD, they're going to go through like a temporary phase of hyperarousal. When I say hyperarousal, it means they they become depressed, then they experience anger, and then it's just a mood change all over. And within those mood changes, there could be very different things that happen to the victim. Now, for instance, if someone's feeling depressed, they can turn to alcohol or drugs, which deteriorates the mind, and it could really destroy someone's life or the lives of the people around them. So with PTSD, you have to be very careful because drug abuse and alcoholism is a real big determining factor in how a person beats the psychiatric condition. But one of the biggest things that people don't know about PTSD is that it really affects the hippocampus in the brain. And now, the hippocampus in the brain is the part of the brain that really facilitates the memory functions of the brain. So, most PTSD patients, like I said, they experience flashbacks. So, they can remember the traumatic event, but sometimes they won't remember the details, or some of the things they won't remember a close family member's name and things like that. Now I know me and my family, I always forget my family members' names. I always go through like 6 or 7 names just to get to the right one. But that doesn't necessarily, I mean, have PTSD. But it's a really mild, or it could be a major form of memory loss. And it's really important that if you know someone, or if you have PTSD, to make sure that you're seeking out the treatment so it doesn't destroy your life. Traumatic events happen, and allowing it to further destroy your life isn't the way to go. So remember, if you or someone you know has this deadly psychiatric condition, to sit there with them, be a support system. That's what they need, a support system. Take them to the doctor, talk to them, try to connect with them, and we could definitely defeat this deadly psychiatric condition. Now, that's all I have. If you guys have any questions or concerns, please just email me on my Kaiser email, or you could just email me in the discussion group. I've had a great time talking to you guys, and I will see you soon.